morning, everyone. Welcome to the Hillcrest Recreation Center. I want to thank the staff here at Hillcrest for working to host us at this event this morning. I'm delighted to be joined by our DPR director, Jesús Aguirre, who does such an outstanding job. He will be doing a major part of the presentation today to talk about how we're proceeding on Play DC, which is our playground improvement project here in the District of Columbia and that we launched recently. Just so everyone knows, for background purposes, I tasked DPR with identifying playgrounds across the city, most in need of renovations. Initially, it was to be a multi-year project, and of course, that has the effect, one, of getting people excited, and then people have to adjust to how long it takes to get things done, which is not something that I find very acceptable. I believe, like many, that renovating our playgrounds is an investment in the well-being of our children that I think, obviously, like some of our other programs, will pay dividends to our children, our families, for years to come. So, in that regard, given the sense of urgency that we had, my budget team identified additional end-of-the-year capital funds to put more playgrounds in line for renovations and to accelerate the pace of those renovations. And now we have a total of 32 playgrounds that will be renovated in fiscal year 2013, rather than the 8 that were initially identified for us to work on. Improving every D.C. resident's quality of life is one of the goals that, of course, is cited in the One City Action Plan, which I'm sure everybody here has read from cover to cover. Also, one strategy emanating from that was to be able to improve the quality of life in recreational settings such as this. I do believe it's important for our neighbors, our residents, to be able to participate in this whole effort and to have a say in what those playgrounds will look like. So today I am sounding the call for resident feedback in Play DC, the Playground Improvement Project. DPR started a first round of meetings 2 weeks ago when residents had the opportunity to give their ideas to DPR. Those meetings continue actually this evening, right, Jesus, at 6 o'clock. The meetings this evening will be located at the Southeast Tennis and Learning Center in Ward 8, and they will be discussing with Oxen Run this evening, I think. And then the Banneker Recreation Center in Ward 1, where they will be discussing Banneker and Harrison. And we've actually gotten some work done in Harrison thanks to Washington Gas. We had a dedication for the work that they had done just a couple of Saturdays ago. Tomorrow, which of course is Thursday, there will be a meeting here to discuss the Hillcrest renovations, which of course is one of the reasons why we're here, and the Rose Park Recreation Center in Ward 2 to discuss the renovation of that playground. All meetings are scheduled for 1 hour and a half, for 90 minutes, from 6 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. We want more residents, as many residents as we can possibly get, to come out, and frankly, to bring their children, because we can learn a lot from kids as well about what it is that gets them interested in the playgrounds and the playground equipment. There will be a second round of 14 meetings that will begin Wednesday, December 5th, and will end on Tuesday, December 20th. Those meetings will focus on the designs that have been developed out of the work. They'll have the renderings there, is that right? So they can see where we are with the input that we've already received. I think all of you in the media have a full list of the meetings in your handouts, and the information can be found as well on the website, dpr.dc.gov. Now to provide an overview of Play DC and the work that we're doing and the pace that we're doing this at, I'm going to ask our DPR director if he will come up and present you with a slide presentation on how we're approaching this. Jesus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for making the commute all the way out here this morning. As the mayor said, we're very excited to talk about the playground initiative, the playground improvement initiative we've labeled Play DC. It is part of Mayor Gray's One City Action Plan under the larger goal of improving the quality of life for all of our residents. There's a specific goal there that talks about making sure that everyone has access to quality recreation facilities. Playgrounds are an important part of what we do. I'm going to see if I can just do this. All right. I apologize. You'd think I know how to do this by now. It doesn't work. I'll do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, so as the mayor said, this really was supposed to be a and it still is a multi-year initiative where we're going to really go through and ensure that every child has a safe and inviting place to play. So our charge initially was, with the initial funding that was identified by the mayor and the budget team, was to renovate up to 8 playgrounds, and which is a pretty significant task to get done, and our goal was to get it done in 1 year. Of course, because this is such an important part of the and improving the quality of life, the mayor and his team, as he mentioned, came back and were able to identify additional dollars to renovate a substantial number of playgrounds. So we'll have 32 playgrounds that are going to be renovated. 8 of those were already in some stage of design or construction, and then we're adding an additional 24. I want to give you a quick overview sort of the process that we went through to implement this initiative. Because what we wanted to do also is make sure that we have a real clear and transparent and consistent way to identify the prioritization of the playgrounds, because we have 78 playgrounds just in the DPR inventory, and of course there's additional playgrounds in the schools and in the charters. We wanted to have a process whereby we could have a real clear and consistent evaluation of these playgrounds so that we can begin to make these decisions when capital monies become available. So we developed in-house a scorecard that has 48 criteria that go through and give us information about the playgrounds, and it's based on the national standards there. We began with a scorecard. We went out and evaluated the initial list that we created, were the prioritized list that we had, and when it was submitted for consideration, there was some council input and others, and we came up with an initial list of 24. We went about evaluating those 24 playgrounds, looking at everything. So we're looking at the surfaces, the equipment, the signage, and overall site conditions, but also looking at, obviously, making sure that these were safe places for kids to play. Went through, did the evaluations for all of that. And then we also looked at who the users were going to be. And our priority, obviously, is the children. So we looked at the census data to around these 24 playgrounds to see which had a higher proportion of children living in that area, because those were going to be at least our primary users to begin with. And we incorporated that into the overall evaluation criteria that gave us a score. So now with these scores, and the important thing about these scorecards is we're going to do them every 2 years at all of our playgrounds. So we'll always have updated information about the safety and grounds, and it will allow us to have this information available to our communities who often come to us and want to support on the maintenance side and some on the capital side, and it helps them prioritize as well. So once we have this information, then we work with our partners at the Department of General Services to design and construct these play spaces. So that's the overall gist of the project. This shows you, I don't know if you can see it all the way back, shows you the initial list of 24 playgrounds, where they're located. So obviously it's pretty comprehensive in terms of we're providing playgrounds across the city. We have 24 sites. It shows you the half-mile buffer to tell you where we looked at in terms of where the kids lived. This is just a snapshot of the scorecard. As I said, there's 48 criteria, and our playground inspectors went out to each and every one of them and went through and listed sort of the score for each of these criteria. Things like, what are the sight lines, what kind of surfacing, etc. Both generally the materials and all the other things, the surface, the signage, accessibility was another piece that we're really focusing on, because not all of our playgrounds are accessible at this point, and it's something that we're going to take advantage of in this initiative to make sure we cover. Once we scored all 24, it was pretty easy now. We have the data to do a very, very easy comparison. If you look at, this is just one visual representation of some of the data that we put together. focused on the ones that we really were worried about in terms of safety. So the ones on the far end, Benning Park Recreation Center playground is in pretty bad shape. So that clearly bubbled up at the top of the list. So when we initially were going to do 8 playgrounds, this was a very easy way to select those playgrounds just based on where the need really was. But as I said earlier, we also wanted to know so this gives you the scores. In this slide, the lower the score, the better the condition of the playground. So using the scorecard, if there was a negative evaluation on one of the criteria, they got a point. If it was positive, they didn't get a point. So you can pretty quickly see that these 2 playgrounds, for example, Benning Park and Ward 7, got a score of 34 out of 48, which means it's in pretty bad shape. Palisades had the next highest score, which was a 33 out of 38. So both of those, immediately we know those were at the top of our priority list had the funding been very limited. But again, it's the model that we're going to continue to use for all of our playgrounds so we can make these decisions based on data. Then, as I said, we looked at the population, within a quarter mile to see where the youth lived, and we added scores to that. So for every 250 kids under the age of 18, or kids that lived in that within a quarter mile, the playground's got an additional point. So again, you can look at what ended up happening. Benning Park, for example, is in a community that has lots of kids living very near it. It got an additional 5 points of weight added to their evaluation score. So clearly, again, very, very easy to see that this is a playground where we need to focus our resources. And you can look at all the others. Palisades, although has a high score on the compliance, didn't have such a high score on the weight for the youth. We limited it to quarter mile. That's a larger space. There's a lot of park area there. Obviously, we expand to a half a mile. There's more kids there. But we picked the criteria just to try to get some real focus on these. So with these scores in hand, now we can move forward and begin the process of designing and renovating these playgrounds. But more importantly, I think it allows us to moving forward in the years to come, again, because this is a multi-year initiative, allows us to prioritize. So depending on how much money we're able to include in our capital budget, we'll be able to use these scores to make those decisions. I think another important piece is it allows us to let lots and lots of groups who want to help us to give them a real focused way to help us. A lot of them want to create friends of groups and do capital campaigns or do maintenance work. This gives us some very specific information on where they can focus their efforts. So when we launched Play DC, we began, as the mayor said, we want to make sure, and he charged us with making sure that there was significant community input into this, because obviously these playgrounds are, in many cases, sort of the core of a community, and so we want to make sure that we hear from the people who are going to use them, and particularly for the young folks. So we designed a process of community meetings to allow that. And this is kind of a snapshot. If you come to the meetings tonight, and we're actually having them almost every night for the next few weeks, if you come to one of our meetings, you'll get some of this information. But we go over with the communities what this playground is, what our vision is. And one of the first places we start to kind of challenge them a little bit is we want to move away from just the playground concept. So it's great to, you look across, and playgrounds typically focus on the play equipment, but we want to look beyond that and talk about play spaces, because we really think there's a lot of opportunity for not just for our children, but for all of the residents of the District of Columbia to be outdoors, to have exciting and innovative ways to experience the outdoors and to play and learn, etc. I mentioned this a little bit. This initiative is important, and part of the reason we're really excited that we have enough funding to do all of these playgrounds is we have 78 playgrounds across the city, and many of them are beyond their useful life. Many of them really are in pretty bad shape. So this gives us an opportunity, really the largest, I think, in the city's history, to completely, substantially renovate almost half of all of the playgrounds in our inventory. We've also begun discussions with the DCPS about figuring out how to do this consistently with their playgrounds as well. I should say one note on the budget piece. We haven't allocated a specific amount to each of these playgrounds because every site is different. If you look at the playground here at Hillcrest and you compare it to some of our other sites, they're just very different. So we don't know. We can't say, well, we're going to spend X money here or X amount in all of the playgrounds, because they're all very, very different. That's going to be sort of part of the work that we do with the architects and the engineers after we do some of the work with the concepts. And our overarching goals here, as I said, we're going to provide safe playgrounds for the kids. We also, I talked about accessibility. We want to make sure that all of these playgrounds are accessible to the residents with special needs, but also looking beyond accessibility and thinking about inclusiveness and including play features and other features in the play space that go beyond just the typical things, but folks with different needs, whether they're physical or sensory and others, we want to make sure that we can promote that for everyone. And we know this increases health and wellness and all of those things. We also, really important for us is community involvement here, because a lot of these playgrounds, as I said, are the core of these communities, and we want to make sure that they're involved in the design and they're involved in the selection of what we're going to put there in terms of activities, because ultimately they're going to help us take care of it. They're going to help us make sure that it can remain an important part of that community. Another opportunity we're taking advantage here is because we're doing this pretty significant process all at once, is looking at how we're building things in the green environment and making sure that we try to manage our stormwater on site. So looking at semi-porous finishes on the ground, putting rain gardens so we can maintain some of the stormwater there, and other things like low plants that require low maintenance, low water. So that again we can not only be responsible about our construction, but also educate the residents in the communities about how important that is in terms of not just the regular, what you think about the regular built environment, but also in our playgrounds. And then also, as I said, we want to encourage volunteerism and partnerships, which is already pretty robust in our agency, but we want to make sure we give tools to our residents. As I mentioned, we want to move away from just playgrounds as we think through these things and move to the play space concept, because it really isn't just about children coming and going down the slide. We really want to look at multi-generational. A lot of the One City Action Plan also talks about the needs of all of our residents. So we're really pushing to create spaces that incorporate not just the kids, but the teens, families, adults, and seniors. Some of the more successful play spaces we've already constructed have, for example, outdoor fitness equipment. So when parents come to the playgrounds, the kids can be in the playground and the parents could be working out while they're keeping an eye on the kids or walking around the track and looking for opportunities to do that. And obviously we have a growing senior population. We want to make sure that these spaces are also for them. Again, we want to make sure that we have a clear message to all of our constituents that play is for everybody and for folks of all abilities. It isn't just for our regularly abled residents, but again, making sure that the spaces are accessible but also inclusive. And we want to get our kids to focus more on their, using their imagination and whether we incorporate things like sand and water and gardens and other natural play spaces is kind of what we're looking to do in these. All of this fits into PR's Move, Grow, Be Green programmatic. It's all about health and physical fitness. It's about personal growth and enrichment, and it's about sort of our responsibility for the environment. So all of this is infused throughout the design of this initiative. To give you guys a little bit of an overview of sort of what we're thinking about when we're looking about rethinking the way the playgrounds work and feel in a community. This is a playground we did about a year and a half ago, I think, in Ward 1, 11th and Monroe. It may be hard to look at the pictures in the back, but it's actually a playground that wasn't in terrible shape. The equipment was actually in pretty good shape, but when you look at it, it was in a situation where it's very dark, lots of walls, lots of fencing. It was sunken. You had very poor sight lines. So a lot of the families with kids weren't going there, and it didn't. There's no place for folks to sit. There was no other place to create an environment, sort of an inviting communal place there. So there really wasn't. It was fine from a safety standpoint, but it really wasn't helping us with our mission of getting folks out there and being physically fit, etc. So what we did with it, and this is an example of what we're hoping to do with some of these play spaces, completely transform it. This is the same shot that you had there, but if you look at it, better sight lines, it's much brighter. We didn't remove any trees, but with the design, it's much brighter. We've built in places for intergenerational play. So we have chess tables, we have seating, we have other things that people can enjoy. We've also, and we're looking to do this at all the places, but we've also celebrated the history here. I don't know, so that park used to be the turnaround for the trolley, so we incorporated that history into not just the design, you see sort of the circular features, but also if you can see the playground equipment, it's train themed. So again, it helps the kids in the community sort of understand what used to be there. So if we're transforming these facilities to what new uses, we want to make sure that we can honor that history and showcase it. So that gives you sort of an example of how we're pushing our folks, not just the designers, but the community, to give us input on the design and rethinking play spaces in DC. As the mayor said, we have an incredibly aggressive schedule. Our goal is to begin to unveil newly renovated playgrounds by the summer of 2013, and we'll roll them out throughout the summer. So by the end of the fiscal year, we'll have completed all of these play spaces. In order to do that, we've been having a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, great interaction with the communities. The first phase, working with our partners at DGS, was to hire architects that are going to help us design. And their job in these initial meetings is to come out and help us sort of elicit input and responses from the community about what they want to see in these play spaces. They will then take that information, and they do that at these design charrette meetings. So these are, we question the residents, say, what do you want to see? How has your community changed? What's important in this community? How can we represent that in the play space? Those are the first phase of meetings that the mayor alluded to or have been happening. In the second phase, the architects then take that information and sort of translate it into a concept. And then they will come back with renderings about, well, here's what we heard you say at the prior meeting. Did we get it right? Here's what we propose. Here's some of the things that you said were important, and begin to have those concepts in place. And we're doing them at a very quick turnaround. We're actually pushing these architects to work very quickly because we want to make sure that we can comply with our aggressive timeline. Once those concepts are done, then of course we have to procure design build teams, and our goal is that as soon as the earth sort of melts in the spring, we'll be able to start construction. And these construction projects are actually pretty quick. We're not building, obviously, buildings. We're actually able to do these fairly quickly. So again, starting in the spring, we'll be able to start the construction and begin to roll out these playgrounds by the summer. And then finally, we also, as we work with the communities, again, we provide opportunities to get input. A lot of times we'll go to meetings and it's hard for folks to articulate what they really want or what they really mean. So we try to make it change the way we approach these meetings a little bit by doing a lot of visual prompting. But one thing we also do is to really focus the conversations is we eliminate the things that we know people are already going to ask about and that we're already covering. So, for example, everybody asks about, are we going to have enough garbage cans, are we going to have lighting, are we going to have benches? So we start off the meeting saying this is going to be present at every single playground. So there's no need to spend any time thinking about those things, discussing those things. Let's think about things differently. So everyone's going to have benches and garbage cans and landscaping, lighting, etc. Shades. We've had a lot of requests for shades over the years, so we're putting shades in all of them. Tables and signage. And then, as I mentioned, two new pieces that we're really focusing on are the stormwater management piece. Every one of these playgrounds is we have some thoughtful work on how we're going to make sure that we minimize sort of the amount of stormwater that we release after rains. And then, of course, the accessibility piece. We want to make sure all of these playgrounds are accessible at a minimum, but really focus on making them inclusive. So these are the things every playground will get. And then here's where we begin to say, you tell us what you want. So don't worry about garbage cans. Think about new ways to play. So what are the priorities? What is it that they like to do and not do? What needs to change? A lot of neighborhoods are in transition. A lot of things are changing. A lot of times we ask, we find out that there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood, but they're not coming to the playground. Maybe because they're teens, so we need to work in maybe some skate spots, other things like that can really activate these play spaces. And then we let them vote. And we have lots of pictures up here where we say, look, tell us, if climbing is a priority, or if you want seating, or if you want natural play space or sand and things like that. This is where it's really fun and exciting to see the kids get involved. So the kids really come up and they really tell us, what they want to see, and are able to very quickly show what their interests are, and it gives us a lot of information then to take back to work with the architects to do the initial concept designs. And so that's the gist of our thing, but the big focus, as the mayor said, we really want more participation from the communities. We've had a lot of meetings that have been very well attended, but we need more, because these play spaces aren't for the one or the for the 10 or the 15 people who come to these meetings. They're for everybody. So we want to make sure we have a diversity of input. And we know some people can't come to the meetings. We've also created a lot of opportunities to share your input with us online. So we've got a survey online where you can go in, select the playground that you're interested in, and answer some questions and give us some input. And we've got lots and lots of, literally hundreds of surveys have been filled out to give us this information. We also have an email address that there's one person staffed with responding, collecting all of that information to again, as it comes in, we share it with the architects and we incorporate it into the concepts. And then finally, we're really getting the word out with our social media and our website and all of those things. But you know, the big piece really is stressing that we would really like to get as much community input as possible because we're building new play spaces. This is going to transform the way we think about play in DC, and we want to make sure that we get input from all of our residents. So, thank you. Sorry, thank you.
All right, questions, comments? Thank you.
I would ask them now, but I want to save it to the round robin so we can ask the questions that are on our minds.
Wait a minute. I don't quite understand what you're saying. What you're saying is that you want to ask a question about this project, which if you did now or later, it really consumes the same amount of time, doesn't it?
It causes a problem for us when we have this long description of this recreation thing. I would like to ask questions.
Recreation thing?
It's a very good thing, but you know, it cuts in the time we have to ask questions, as I'm doing now, so I'll stop talking.
All right. We got some other issues than we want to talk about. I want to thank Jesus for a very thorough discussion, and frankly, I think it's a model, too, of community engagement. It doesn't get any more fundamental than working with the parents and the children of our community. And when you think about 32 playgrounds, I think we've touched virtually every community here in the District of Columbia, and at a record speed also, so that people don't have to wait interminably in order to be able to see the results of their engagement with us on this. I also want to take a moment to congratulate Jesus and all the people at DPR on another season of the Pop Warner program here in the District of Columbia. DPR actually has the charter for Pop Warner, and I think we're one of only 2 recreation departments in the country that hold a charter. And we just had, the Eastern Regionals here over the past weekend. This year we had, resulting from that, we had 3 teams from the District of Columbia who will advance to the 56th annual Pop Warner Super Bowl National Championship, which will be held starting this Friday. At least the efforts will start this Friday and will run through Saturday, December 8th. And they will be in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. The teams that are competing this year, and I see we have some representatives from those teams here with us today. The Watkins Hornets will compete for the Division I Junior Pee Wee title. Those kids are ages 8 to 11 years old. Marshall Heights will compete for the Division I Junior Midget title, which will be an age group of 10 to 13. And Beacon House will compete for the Division I Pee Wee title, which is kids ages 9 to 12 years of age. Actually, our Pop Warner teams have done very well over the last 3 years. In 2011, Marshall Heights won the Division I Pee Wee Pop Warner Super Bowl national title. Beacon House won the 2011 Division I Junior Pee Wee Pop Warner National runner-up title. And in 2010, Beacon House won the national title for junior Pee Wee teams. And then a couple of others. The Watkins Hornets won the runner-up position in the junior midgets. And then finally, the Watkins Hornets won the 2009 Division Pee Wee Pop Warner Super Bowl national title. These are some really good programs, and I want to commend the coaches who work with these young people. Many of you know that I follow these things fairly closely. I had a chance to be at the playoffs for the DCIAA, and there were a couple of kids who I think at one time were in the Watkins program who were playing, one for Woodson, who's a quarterback for Woodson, and another who's a running back for Dunbar at this stage. And both of them comported themselves very well, and I want to again commend the coaches for having worked with these young people to get them ready for the next level. There are 68 teams in the city. Is that right? 68 teams? Yeah, with 1,500 youth who participate. And if there are people who would like to donate to facilitate the teams participating in these national finals, and yes, the District of Columbia will be helping to support this effort for those who have a question about it, and I'm delighted that we are. We budgeted this year for this to try to make sure that our kids had a chance to get there and compete in these opportunities that not only are athletic but also social endeavors, because they get a chance to meet kids that they otherwise wouldn't meet over the next week. Any questions about that? Tom?
No, sir.
A couple of other issues that I want to talk about. First of all, yesterday we issued a request for expressions of interest for Phase 1 of the St. Elizabeth's campus. This will be a 600,000 square foot parcel of the 180-acre site that we're talking about. I think you know this has been in the making for some time, and we've now reached this point in this process. East is one of the district's last remaining large undeveloped parcels here in the District of Columbia. It is the request for expression of interest seeks prospective development partners who will realize the district's vision for a mixed-use community that will hopefully bring together an effort to create and innovate, educate, and do a variety of things that will create more additional significant economic opportunities on the east side of the District of Columbia. I think you know we just announced our 5-year economic development strategy. This is very much a part of it. In fact, it'll be a catalyst for being able to move forward with that strategy. We've completed a master plan for the site. We did, in the fiscal year 13 budget, provide $113 million for capital investments, infrastructure investments at the site, and that will lead to building roads and utilities and other infrastructure investments that will facilitate the development of the St. E site. Last month, we awarded the design and construction of the new new Gateway Pavilion to the design team of Davis, Brody, Bond, CADCON, and Robert Silman Associates as well. It anticipates the creation of an innovative, flexible, and aesthetically unique structure that will have a wide range of uses on the campus. And we expect construction to begin in the first quarter, sometime after January 1st, 2013. We also have continued our conversations with 3 excellent firms around technology development there. That would be Sidlam, USA, SmartBIM, and Microsoft around their potential location on the east side of the campus. It is an exceptional opportunity, we think, for the development, private development, and will create a landmark for the 21st century. So we ask you to continue to follow that with us as we move along. Any questions about the RFEI that just was issued? Ms. Brazil?
Some time ago, when you announced a group of individuals, I think it was a committee of 3, the 3 co-chairmen, that were going to put together a larger group to look at St. Elizabeth You had some prominent developers on that committee. Have they recused, or would they be potential submitters of a request, response to the request for expressions of interest?
Are you talking about the group that includes Herb Miller and the other folks?
Yes.
I don't think they're involved in this at all. As a matter of fact, one of the things Herb Miller said to me, even before we said that, was that he didn't plan to participate. He really wanted to simply help the city develop what is one of the most important sites, if not the most important site in the city.
You as mayor, are you going to set a bar pretty high in terms of saying that all those who participated in the development
recuse themselves
for the vision will recuse themselves and not be participating as potential developers in any of the development teams that might come forward?
Yes. And again, this was discussed in the very early going because we recognized that there was certainly a possibility for those who may be involved in advising us, and again, I want to say advising us, they're not decision makers, that it could give the appearance of an unfair advantage in this process. So, right, Brian and David, they've recused themselves from this, right?
Themselves, that's correct.
Okay. I can't remember all the people who are on that now, but I think one of them just was appointed as the AEDC CEO. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Stan Jackson was on that list, so that is possible.
Okay, so if as people change their lives, which inevitably happen, if there appears to be something in the change of their life that would have an inherent conflict of interest, we'd ask them to remove themselves from the advisory committee. I want to mention today, too, this is an issue that has arisen. Recently, we determined, based on input, again, from a variety of folks from the community, that there are no regulations for enforcement or enforcement mechanisms that would make it illegal for motor vehicles to make all U-turns across bicycle lanes, such as those on Pennsylvania Avenue. It would not make it illegal, or there's no enforcement mechanism unless the bicyclist or pedestrian is actually present at the time that this incident occurs. Infractions for failing to yield to a biker have been difficult at best to be able to enforce. In any event, we think the current situation leaves bicyclists too vulnerable to injury or even possibly being killed. Therefore, after we heard from the bicycle community as well as others and reviewing the current situation, I've directed the pertinent District of Columbia agencies to immediately address this issue. So today, I'm pleased to announce that the District Department of Transportation, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the Metropolitan Police Department have worked together to create emergency rulemaking that would prohibit U-turns across bicycle lanes at all times. It will be effective on December 1st, which of course is this coming Saturday. All three agencies will be getting the word out to the public on this new violation through social media, listservs, and press releases. I know we have representatives from one, maybe all of these agencies here today who will join me in answering any questions that you may have about that. Anyone have any questions about that issue?
Mayor Drake, Jacob Benson with WAMU. I've talked to several cycling advocates who say there needs to be a physical barrier on those lanes on Pennsylvania Avenue, like plastic bollards or a curb, and that's obviously an issue with the Commission of Fine Arts, but would you support something like that? I
think I'd want to consult with the relevant agencies before we do that. I mean, being able to strike that balance, of course, is a very important one, and we've tried a number of things. If you look at 15th Street, for example, where you have the cars moved out from the curb and the bike lanes are between the curb and the parked cars. That's one approach we've used. We've used another approach on L Street, and that's received, mixed reviews from people who drive. One of the things we're committed to is to increase the number of bike lanes in the city. We have 55 miles of bike lanes. We're going to 80 miles of bike lanes, and we're going to do it in the best way we can to strike the balance between the concerns of motorists and the important safety concerns of bicyclists, and frankly, as well as pedestrians, too. Okay. Others? Questions? Ms. Brazil?
This is a gentleman. I'd like to ask you a question that sort of combines your announcement today about Play DC, as well as an ongoing issue that has gotten increased media attention. You emphasize that Play DC seeks community input, and you specifically said you were sounding the call for resident feedback. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great initiative. I think most DC government programs should seek resident input. Can you walk me through the resident input that occurred with regards to changing parking in the District of Columbia, especially in areas such as the controversial change in Ward 1?
We have someone from DDOT. I see John Lau here. Come on up. Did you hear the question?
I did.
Okay.
Well, if you maybe could repeat the very end of it. Sam Zimbabwe. I'm the Associate Director for Zimbabwe, just like the country. Associate Director for Policy and Planning at DDOT.
It's quite a name to have be named for a country.
That's true. Yeah, just the end there.
Are you ready?
Ready.
The major input of today's press conference on Play DC is for the mayor to seek community input in terms of renovation of playgrounds in the District of Columbia. And to that end, he specifically said that he was sounding the call for resident feedback. I think it's a great idea in terms of resident feedback. Too many programs and initiatives go forward without any resident input, and it's an afterthought. With regard to the issue of parking, and I would add something else. The mayor, a couple of weeks ago, released his economic development strategy for the District of Columbia that has a major component of attracting retail to the District of Columbia. With all that said, can you tell me where the resident input occurred as regards this controversial plan that DDOT has bought into in terms of dramatically changing parking in the District of Columbia?
So we've been involved very recently in seeking a lot of resident input about parking through a series of parking think tanks around the district, and we're going to be next Tuesday evening at 441 4th Street. I think it's 6 to 8 p.m. Responding back about sort of what we've heard and where things need to go. And I think that parking is always one of the most difficult things we face in terms of balancing the needs of residents, visitors of all kinds, whether they be retail or visiting other things on their daily need. And it is something that we've been seeking actively community input over the last few months, and have heard a variety of things. So I think that the summit that we're going to have next Tuesday evening will help to share back with everybody what we've heard. We also had, in addition to the think tanks, we had an online survey, and we had surveys available at those think tanks for people to provide their response to a whole bunch of questions. So we can provide a lot of information about how people are currently using parking and where things where we've heard input about where things could go.
In response to what you just said, first of all, where and when were these parking think tanks held, and how did one find out about it? Second of all, this summit next Tuesday evening, what is it, and how does someone find out? Third, you talk about an online survey.
Let's take them one at a time.
No, I mean, this is his thing.
Well, I know, but we'll give you one chance.
Okay.
Let us take one at a time.
The parking think tanks.
Yeah. So we did several press releases. We've had a website up on the think tanks announcing them. I don't recall exactly when and where each of them was. I think we had 6 total across the district at various times of day. We did a weekend one, we did a midday one, and we did several in the evenings in various neighborhoods to make them as accessible to people as possible. The summit, I think we...
No, wait, let's finish with the parking think tank. How would someone find out about it? You said you posted a press release on DDOT's website. How would the average citizen know about these parking think tanks?
So it went out to our general release release list. And the press and interested citizens as well. We put it out on our social media in a variety of ways. And we announced them, we started talking about them well before we started to hold them in a variety of forms that we were out in the community on a regular basis.
Okay, so how many did you hold?
We held 6.
Okay. Summit next Tuesday.
Yes.
What is it? And what is it, and how does someone find out about it?
Again, we've put out information both to people that came to the parking think tanks, and then through our press release on it. It's really intended to share back, because we had 6 different meetings. We didn't expect anybody to attend all 6. So we wanted to have a forum for people to come back together, hear everything that we heard, hear all these different formats of what we heard, and say, here's from you, and start to chart a path forward. We're not going to be announcing sweeping changes next Tuesday. We're really trying to say, here's what we have heard over the fall, and here's where we think we can move this forward.
Can I get clarification? You're having a summit next Tuesday evening regarding parking?
Yes, we're summarizing what we heard during the think tank.
Where and when, and this is the mayor's weekly press conference, on such an important issue such as this, don't you think it would have been appropriate for the mayor to make an announcement so that citizens who don't visit your website, who don't get your press releases, would know about this important summit next Tuesday night?
6 to 8 p.m., 441 4th Street, Northwest, 1 Judiciary Square.
What room?
I believe in the old council chambers.
Mr. Mayor, I think Doxy said at the beginning of this that you have a new rule in place that you're only going to take questions while you're standing there at the lectern, and that you're not going to take questions afterwards when the reporters come up. Is that a new change in policy? Is that what you said? Members of the press could only ask questions while he's there.
Tom, can I respond? Let me respond to that, okay? And you know this as well as anybody, okay? I have been incredibly accessible to you all, not just at these bi-weeklies, but I see you guys out. I see you in the Wilson building. You ask me all kinds of questions. I do the best that I can to answer those questions that I can answer. You know that there has been incredible accessibility, don't you?
Yes, sir. That's why I was asking the question if there'd been a policy change.
Well, I don't think she said that. Bruce.
Mr. Mayor, could you address the fiscal cliff, what it will mean to the city in terms of lost revenues, services? Have you been looking into this?
Yeah, as you know, this is it's a work in progress, not of our making, but at the federal level. There are 2 aspects to it that we've looked at. The first is the effect on revenue to the District of Columbia, and we've projected that it would probably have, I don't know, $49 to $50 million effect on revenue to the city. That would be through income taxes, property taxes, and sales taxes that would be curtailed to some extent because of the potential effects, especially on the contractor community at the federal level. We already have taken that into consideration. We worked with the CFO. That is now reflected in the revenue estimates for the city. So if it were to be a $49 to $50 million impact, you probably wouldn't see any further impact because it's already been considered in the revenue estimates. Now, the other side of this is what kind of programmatic impact would there be on the District of Columbia? And the best estimates we have right now, I guess the worst case scenario would be another $60 million that would affect us in terms of education. For example, the TAG program, which supports our kids being able to pay tuition in another state, could be affected. The 3-sector approach that supports the charters, supports the D.C. public schools, and money, of course, goes to vouchers as well, certainly could be affected. Homeland security, health care, all could be affected in terms of dollars that would come to the District of Columbia. So in the aggregate, you're talking about maybe around $100 to $110 million. But again, all we can do is speculate about that at this stage because this continues to be under discussion.
But bottom line, citizens will feel this.
Certainly, if it unfolds the way if it unfolds the way it could unfold, they certainly will. But I think it would be less noticeable because of the revenue issue, because we've already taken that into consideration. There would be no further, unless it gets worse, but there would be no further reductions beyond, on the revenue side, beyond the $49-50 million, because it's already been considered.
Okay, if I could just follow up with one question. If you just talk about the tuition assistance program, young people going to school elsewhere at in-state tuition. Now, would that mean that immediately parents would have to absorb those costs? Does that mean, that these students would have to stop going? You're asking, what does that mean?
Well, the best information we have, and Bruce, I don't want to be redundant, but again, you recognize that this is something out of our control. So the rules will be made up as they go along. But again, the best information we have is that this would be retroactive to the beginning of fiscal year 13, which means that you would have costs that already have been absorbed, for this fiscal year. In other words, the first semester for kids who are in those schools. We'd have to figure out how best to handle that because that's already been done, and then the second semester as well. I don't know that we have a solution to that as yet. We're trying to, again, follow this process as closely as we can. But I guess the answer to your question is that if the TAG program were to be affected, it would be effective back to October 1st, which would affect virtually this entire school year, and those dollars would have to be covered in some kind of way. What kind of way, I don't know yet.
And it's possible parents would have to cover that, right?
Yeah. And by the way, if there are grant programs that are affected on the programmatic side, they would be retroactive to October 1st as well, which means that dollars on those grant programs, we would have to figure out how to cover those dollars ourselves. Yes.
So far, the DC Council has not yet scheduled any kind of vote in committee, or much less the full council, on campaign finance reform. In a year in which campaign finance issues have loomed pretty large in the city, what would it mean if the council did not act on that, at least in your mind?
Well, we've advanced our proposal, and we've, our Attorney General has worked with the council as closely as we can on this. This is ultimately a council decision. If it doesn't get out by the end of the year, then we'll immediately reintroduce it as soon as we possibly can on January 2nd or 3rd, whatever the first date is that we can reintroduce and work to try to get it passed. Sam?
Yes, Mayor. Recently, the transportation section of D.C. public schools, or IC, or however it's defined, the school buses went back to city control, and they had a master. And then I understand last night you had a situation where a 4-year-old was left on a bus, and a special needs 4-year-old, I guess, in a child seat or something. That's my understanding. What are your thoughts about this? I mean, the city was control was taken away because basically the city wasn't running it right. Now the city gets it back, and you got a situation like that.
Well, obviously, it's not something that we feel good about, Sam. It didn't happen last night. What happened was this was a child who was on a bus, was being taken to school. We have the state superintendent here who can further clarify some of this for you, but for some reason the child was not taken into school, was picked up at home, not taken into school. Then the bus came back to the bus yard, and the child was discovered on the bus when they were getting ready to go out and make the afternoon runs. So the child was on the bus probably from around 9 o'clock in the morning, in the bus yard until early afternoon when they were going out to make the runs. It's no acceptable reason for this to happen, and the people who were responsible for this were fired yesterday. And Superintendent, you probably want to add something to that.
Hi, my name is Hosanna Mahaley, and I'm the State Superintendent, and I run the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, which is also referred to as OSSE. Student transportation is one of our divisions. I am happy to report that the child is doing well. I visited the student and the family last night, and they were in good spirits and doing well. What took place yesterday was a rare and unbelievable and totally unacceptable incident. When we were informed that the child had been on the bus all day, it was picked up at 7:30 in the morning. The bus went to the school. The other children on the bus got off, but this particular child was still on the bus. And as the mayor said, when they went back for the afternoon route, it was discovered that the child was still on the bus. He was alert, and then he was taken to the hospital. We immediately launched an investigation, and that incident was due to a gross and negligent violation of protocol on the behalf of 2 individuals. We have 4 protocols in place to prevent incidents like this one. One is that on all of our buses there's a driver and an attendant. Whenever a bus goes to a school, the driver and attendant are to check the bus and ensure that there are no students on it when they leave the school. Second, when the bus gets back to the yard, the driver and the student are supposed to check the bus and ensure that there are no students on the bus. Both of those things didn't take place yesterday. Third, on the buses, there alert buzzer in the back of it, because this incident does happen. Although it's rare, it happens around the country. There's a button on the back of the bus which forces the driver and attendant to go to the back. When they turn the bus off, the buzzer goes off and they have to walk to the back to turn it off to ensure that there are no students on there. These 2 individuals disabled the buzzer on their bus. And fourth, we have a rule that the attendant should sit in the bus behind all the students, and yesterday the attendant was sitting in the front with the driver. So the 2 individuals involved, they apologized to the city, the family, to me. They wrote written apologies, and they were terminated. So unfortunately, this was a gross violation of protocol, but in no way indicative of the service that's provided by our 1,600 employees every day. We are committed to safe and reliable transportation.
Why did they disengage the button?
They did not have an explanation. They just said they apologized.
Did you ask as part of the investigation?
We did, and they were just stunned. And from that, we have issued a reminder to all drivers and attendants that it is required that they keep this buzzer on and that they must check. We're doing safety inspections now to make sure that they are all active. They didn't have a response. They just continued to say, "We're sorry, we're sorry, we're sorry." That was.
Has the matter been turned over to any other body for further investigation, possible criminal investigation, child neglect, anything like that?
We are talking to the Attorney General for the city.
I don't think you can want to name who the people are, but can you characterize, were these veterans, were these newbies, people who had not had all the experience?
One.
Characterize them.
They were. They had been employed as drivers and attendants. The driver had been with us for 10 years and the attendant for 5. And in both of their statements, they said, nothing like this had ever occurred. It was a rare and bizarre and unacceptable event.
What school should this child have been dropped off at?
Well, why don't we not go into that information at this stage, Bruce? There were, what is astounding to me also, I think there were 6 children that they picked up. These bus routes don't characteristically have large numbers of kids so that we can get them there on time. They don't have to pick up 20 or 25 kids. And it's just amazing to me because they, again, pick up the same kids every day. And you don't know that of 6 kids, a 4-year-old is still on the bus, that you didn't, after you picked them up, you didn't take them into school. I mean, it's absolutely astounding what has gone on. We are obviously continuing to investigate this, but we took immediate, decisive action, as the superintendent has outlined. And again, if you look at the data, and we gather very substantial amounts of data about performance with the transportation system, including things like how many of the kids get there within 20 minutes of 20 minutes before the bell rings, how many get there 30 minutes before the bell rings, how many get there before the bell rings in school. Ironically, last week, we had over 99% of the kids who got to school and were there before the bell rang. So the performance has improved tremendously, and we will continue to do this. We are, implementing additional monitoring systems. We were doing this anyway. Additional monitoring systems in our own, within the education system to look at this. I look at this as an outlier, a completely unacceptable outlier. It will be completely and fully investigated, and if there are additional steps that are warranted to be taken, they will be taken.
What about criminal charges? Do you think,
That's what the superintendent says. She's consulting with the Attorney General to talk this through. Again,
how many kids are we now?
we transport about 3,300, isn't it? About 3,300. Some to private schools, others to charters or D.C. public schools.
Were the people involved tested for drugs?
I don't know.
They were not tested. When we called them in and they wrote their statements, they were immediately terminated. They were not tested.
How was the student's teacher not aware that this child was missing all day?
I'm not able to answer.
Well, certainly there could be an assumption on the part of a teacher that the child was absent. I mean, these are children with special needs, and unfortunately they miss days. So I don't find it unusual that a teacher would not assume that the child was just not feeling well that day and didn't come to school.
Is there usually a process for parents to contact the school if the child should be out of class?
So the investigation is ongoing. There are things that we're still looking at, but normally when a child is not in school, there is a call and the parent is notified. So there are lots of protocols that we're examining, but I can speak to you about what we know today. Today we know for certain what happened on the bus, and I can speak to you about the actions that were taken, but as stated earlier, the investigation is still ongoing.
The age of the child, male, female?
Male, he was 4 years old.
How long were these employees with the school system?
That was what you said earlier. You said 10
Right.
years, 5 years, and 10 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay, and this investigation will continue, and as appropriate, we will make further reports about findings, and if there are other actions that will be taken, we'll certainly make make public what those actions are. Thank you all very much.